After Star Wars was released, it became apparent that my story, however many films it took to tell, was only one of thousands that could be told about the characters who inhabited its galaxy. But these were not the stories that I was destined to tell. Instead, they would spring from the imagination of other writers, inspired by the glimpse of a galaxy that Star Wars provided. Today, it is an amazing, if unexpected, legacy of Star Wars that so many gifted writers are contributing new stories to that saga. George Lucas, from the introduction of A Splinters of the Mind's Eye, 1996.
Welcome back to the Skywalker Files from a certain point of view, the podcast where we explore the sprawling galaxy of the Star Wars expanded universe one story at a time, because apparently watching the movies wasn't nearly enough homework. Today we turn our attention to Outlander, a Dark Horse comic series that first ran in 1999. It picks up right after the events of Prelude to Rebellion and, like its predecessor, follows the misadventures of Jedi Council member Ki-Adi-Mundi. But whereas the last tale kept us grounded on his homeworld of Saraya, this one wastes no time losing him into the kind of chaotic frontier storytelling that feels ripped right out of a pulp western, with lightsabers, hut gangs, and more desert than you can shake a moisture evaporator at. In many ways, Outlander is the quintessential expanded universe comic of its era. Larger-than-life characters, moral ambiguity, and a tendency to push Jedi into places where the Republic either can't or won't intervene. It's part political drama, part space western, and part crash course into how Jedi ideals tend to fray when you drop them into the middle of Hutt space. So saddle up, because we're leaving behind the traditions of Saraya and riding headlong into the lawless wastes of Tatooine. Outlander was published by Dark Horse Comics in 1999, running through issues number 7 through 12 of the then new Star Wars Monthly comic series. The script was penned by Timothy Truman, a veteran comic writer best known for his work on Conan, Hawkworld, and Jonah Hex. In other words, someone very comfortable writing about rugged loners navigating violent frontier landscapes. It makes sense that Dark Horse tapped him for a story that would lean so heavily on the space western tone. The art came from Tomas Giorello, whose style mixes grit with a kind of cinematic framing, perfect for a story that involves Tusken Raiders, sandstorms, and a Hutt crime syndicate or two. His panels give Tatooine a texture that feels almost tactile, the grit of sand in your teeth and the sting of sunburn after 3 too many twin sunrises. As for timeline placement, Outlander is set about 32 years before the Battle of Yavin, just after the events of the Phantom Menace. It follows directly on the heels of Prelude to Rebellion, which means Ki-Adi-Mundi is still relatively new to his seat on the Jedi Council. That's significant. He's a Jedi caught between the lofty responsibilities of the Council and the often messy realities of life on the Outer Rim. And in this case, his mission sends him straight to Tatooine, a planet that, for all intents and purposes, is as lawless as it gets. This positioning makes Outlander an interesting bridge. It deepens the portrayal of Ki-Adi-Mundi just before Episode 1 hits theaters, and it also gives us one of the EU's earliest glimpses into the life of Aurra Sing, a character who would briefly flash across the Phantom Menace before vanishing back into obscurity, only to find far more life in comics and novels. At the center of Outlander is Ki-Adi-Mundi. Having only just joined the Jedi Council, he's dispatched on a mission far removed from Coruscant's polished halls. to track down a missing Jedi, rumored to be leading Tusken Raiders in violent raids across Tatooine. Where Prelude to Rebellion explored Mundi's family obligations, Outlander tests his ability to balance Jedi duty with empathy, judgment, and the messy realities of life beyond the Republic's reach. Here, he's less diplomat and more reluctant enforcer, drawn into a conflict where every choice feels like a compromise. The missing Jedi is none other than Sharad Hett. Once a promising knight, Hett abandoned the trappings of the Order after becoming disillusioned with Republic corruption. On Tatooine, he found a new life amongst the Tusken Raiders, embracing their ways, their code, and eventually leading them as one of their own. To settlers in the Hutts, he's a terrorist. To the Tuskens, he's a savior who gave them strength against encroaching colonists and gangsters. Hett embodies the pull between Jedi ideals and local loyalty, a man who chose identity over orthodoxy. Alongside him is Sharad Hett, his son. The young Tusken-raised Force user grows up caught between two heritages, Jedi and Raider. His journey begins here, but fans of the expanded universe know his path will lead to far darker legacies in the years ahead. The ever-present hand of crime comes through Jabba the Hutt. He looms over the conflict, ever eager to maintain control of Tatooine's resources. To Jabba, Tusken uprisings and Jedi interventions are merely nuisances to be exploited. His presence grounds the story in the wider galactic underworld, reminding us that even Jedi business is rarely free from Hutt entanglements. Then we have Aurra Sing. This is her breakout story. Before she was a 1-second cameo in The Phantom Menace, here she becomes a fully fleshed out character. A rogue Jedi turned bounty hunter with a sharp shot and an even sharper grudge against her former order. She's deadly, charismatic, and unpredictable, serving as a dark mirror to Ki-Adi-Mundi. Where he embodies the burden of responsibility, she embodies freedom twisted into violence. The EU would go on to make her a recurring player, but Outlander is where her legend begins. Together, these characters frame Outlander not just as a desert tale, but as a meditation on loyalty, identity, and what it means when Jedi choose different ways to live with the Force. The story begins with Ki-Adi-Mundi dispatched by the Jedi Council to Tatooine, tasked with investigating reports of Tusken Raiders attacking outlying settlements. But these aren't ordinary Tusken raids. Their leader is said to wield a lightsaber. That revelation alone is enough to alarm the Council. A Jedi, long thought lost, now at the heart of violence against civilians? It's the kind of uncomfortable mission only a newly appointed council member would be volunteered for. Upon arrival, Mundi encounters the stark reality of Tatooine's frontier. Settlers see the Tuskens as nothing more than savages. The Tusken clans, however, see themselves as a people under siege by colonists encroaching on their sacred lands. This moral ambiguity is the heart of Outlander. Both sides have blood on their hands, and the Jedi must navigate a conflict with no clean resolution. Ki-Adi eventually comes face to face with Sharad Hett. Hett has indeed taken up the Tusken way of life, donning their robes and leading them as one of their own. Far from being corrupted, Hett has found purpose here. He believes the Jedi Council turned a blind eye to injustice, while among the Tuskens, he has rediscovered honor and belonging. For Ki-Adi, this creates an impossible dilemma. How do you judge a man who is both Jedi and warlord, both protector and killer? Into this powder keg strides Aurra Sing, the wild card. She's hired to eliminate Hett, and she relishes the opportunity to hunt Jedi. Her involvement escalates the violence, pitting Jedi against Jedi-trained assassin in the unforgiving desert. When the dust settles, tragedy strikes. Sharad Hett falls, leaving behind his young son, Sharad, who must now carry both the Tusken heritage and the Jedi legacy. The story closes on Ki-Adi-Mundi bringing Sharad back into the Jedi fold. It's less a victory and more a bittersweet compromise. The settlers remain uneasy, the Tuskens remain marginalized, and Jabba still controls the planet from his palace. Nothing is neatly resolved. But out of the wreckage, the Jedi gain a new apprentice, one whose future will stretch far beyond the confines of this tale. What gives Outlander its resonance is its refusal to offer easy answers. It reads less like a straightforward adventure and more like a tragedy wrapped in a western. The Jedi are not saviors here, they are outsiders, imposing order where none exists. Sharad Hett's story embodies the struggle between duty to the order and the need for belonging. His fall is as much about ideals as it is about violence. Meanwhile, Aurra Sing is the creeping shadow of what happens when Jedi abandon the light entirely. Her presence serves as a counterpoint to Hett's. He left the Jedi for community, she left them for chaos. Both stand as cautionary tales for Ki-Adi-Mundi, and, by extension, for the reader. At its heart, Outlander asks what it truly means to be a Jedi when you step beyond the Republic's safety net. Do you uphold the code at all costs, or do you adapt, even if it means betraying those ideals? It's a story steeped in ambiguity, tragedy, and the kind of dusty moral grayness that makes it linger long after the final panel. One of the great strengths of Outlander is how it plants seeds that sprout across the expanded universe for decades to come. The most obvious connection is Sharad Hett. Introduced here as the son of Sharad Hett, he carries forward both the legacy of the Jedi and the culture of the Tusken Raiders. This dual heritage makes him a fascinating figure, and it sets him apart from other Jedi of his era. In later stories, we see him trained under the Jedi Council during the Clone Wars, fighting as a general. But his Tusken upbringing never truly leaves him, and in the far future of the EU, long after the fall of the Republic, his journey takes a dark and transformative turn. Without spoiling too much, let's just say that Sharad becomes one of the most consequential figures of the post-Return of the Jedi timeline, reshaping the galaxy under a very different name. Then there's Aurra Sing. While the Phantom Menace gave her only a blink and you'll miss it cameo during the pod race, Outlander is the story that truly launched her as a character. From here, she would go on to appear in multiple comics, novels, and eventually even the Clone Wars animated series. She became a staple of the fallen Jedi archetype in Star Wars, proof that the Jedi Order left its share of casualties behind. Her rivalry with Jedi like Aayla Secura and her entanglements with bounty hunters like Boba Fett all find their roots in this early portrayal. Ki-Adi-Mundi's arc also gains depth here. When he reappears in The Phantom Menace, he's the council member who skeptically dismisses Anakin Skywalker as too old. Outlander shows us why he might hold such rigid views. He's seen firsthand the dangers of Jedi straying from the code in both Sharad Hett and Aurra Sing. It adds a quiet, tragic irony to his film appearances. Finally, there is the setting itself, Tatooine. By returning us to this desert planet before the films, the EU continues to underline Tatooine's outsized importance in galactic storytelling. It's more than just Luke Skywalker's home. It's a crucible for Jedi, outlaws, and crime lords alike. Outlander reminds us that long before the Skywalkers, this backwater world was already shaping destinies. In short, Outlander isn't just a self-contained Western, it's a hinge point. It introduces characters who will ripple outward for decades, reframes a film character's perspective, and strengthens Tatooine's mythic place in the galaxy far, far away. When taken on its own, Outlander might look like a straightforward desert adventure. Jedi, Tuskens, a few blaster fights, and a tragic end. But within the larger expanded universe, it becomes something more substantial. A story about identity, loyalty, and the limits of Jedi philosophy when confronted with realities the Order would rather ignore. Sharad Hett's arc is the heart of the comic, and it's what lingers long after the last page. Here is a Jedi who walked away not out of greed or lust for power, but out of disillusionment. He didn't fall to the dark side. He simply sought belonging in a place the Jedi could never understand. His story exposes the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the Jedi Code is less a path of enlightenment and more a cage that denies the messy complexity of life in the Outer Rim. Ki-Adi-Mundi's journey mirrors that discomfort. In him, we see a Jedi trying to reconcile compassion with obligation, faced with a choice that leaves no one satisfied. He gains Sharad as a ward, yes, but he loses Sharad, fails to protect the settlers, and can do nothing to dismantle Jabba's grip on Tatooine. It's a hollow victory, if it can be called a victory at all. And then there's Aurra Sing, a figure who slashes into the narrative like a reminder that not every Jedi leaves the Order in search of belonging. Some leave because anger and violence are easier. Where Sharad Hett's path is tragic, Aurra's is terrifying, a glimpse at how dangerous an untethered Force user can become. In the end, Outlander feels less like a tale of triumph and more like a prologue to future reckonings. It foreshadows Sharad Hett's long, winding path. It enriches Ki-Adi-Mundi's role in the prequels. And it underscores a theme that will become central in the prequel era, that the Jedi are not infallible sages, but flawed guardians who often fail to understand the galaxy they claim to serve. It's dusty, it's tragic, and it leaves us with more questions than answers, which, frankly, makes it a perfect Star Wars story. So that was Outlander, a story of Jedi ideals colliding with Tusken survival, of a father's tragic end and a son's uncertain beginning, all set against the backdrop of Tatooine's endless sands. It's not the kind of story that ties itself up neatly, but that's exactly what makes it stick. Outlander reminds us that the Jedi Council's reach doesn't extend everywhere, and when they try, the result is often messy, complicated, and far from heroic. Next time on the Skywalker Files from a certain point of view, we leave the deserts of Tatooine behind and head to the political arenas of the Republic. The Dark Horse Comics arc, Emissaries to Malastare, awaits us, where pod racing meets diplomacy, and Jedi negotiations are anything but straightforward. If Outlander was a space western, Emissaries to Malastare is a political thriller with engines roaring in the background, a tale of corruption, intrigue, and the uneasy balance of power on the galactic stage. So until then, may your moisture evaporators stay in good repair, and may your Jedi missions never require haggling with Hutts.